For 200 years, the War of 1812 has been seen as a watershed moment in our history. The War of 1812 united French and English-speaking Canadians, First Peoples, and the British against a common foe. The victory gained through their successful joint defense against the Americans helped lay the foundations for modern Canada. To honor those who experienced the war firsthand, Library and Archives Canada has created Faces of 1812. This exhibition highlights the conflict as a rich and continuing source of artistic inspiration, commemoration, and reflection. Welcome to the Canadian War Museum, the keeper of our nation's military past. It is here that you'll find incredible stories of valor, of courage, and sacrifice that help shape our nation. And it is also here that you will find Library and Archives Canada's exhibition, Faces of 1812. I was given access to the incredible vaults of Library and Archives Canada, a veritable treasure trove of Canadian history. And it is there where I was presented with my first challenge. That is, not everyone had their portrait taken in the early 19th century. The second issue I encountered while putting this exhibition together was that many of the paintings that depict the War of 1812 and its participants were painted long after the conflict was over. The images appeal more to our memories of the war than to the actual events themselves. And in several cases, they were created long after the death of those depicted. Ultimately, a balance had to be struck between works created at the time and the post-war paintings and illustrations. So to whom do the Faces of 1812 belong? They are the combatants, civilians and nation builders, men and women who have captured our historical imagination for more than 2 centuries. There are, of course, the key players, such as Major General Sir Isaac Brock. Killed in the Battle of Queenston Heights in October 1812, the tall, athletic, and popular Brock instantly became the hero of Upper Canada. The portrait of Brock was painted 85 years after his death in 1897 by the renowned portrait artist John W.L. Forster. Forster was meticulous in his research, and he used a sketch of Brock found in Brock's family cottage on the island of Guernsey for reference. In the exhibition, we've also included a map drawn by Brock, where he illustrates the importance of the St. Lawrence and the Great Lakes as primary British transportation routes. One of Brock's greatest allies against the Americans was the Shawnee leader Tecumseh. Their historic meeting was captured almost 100 years later in a watercolor by one of Canada's most noteworthy artists of historical scenes, Charles William Jeffreys. Using historical research as his guide, Jeffreys provides us with his artistic impression of what this fateful meeting might have looked like if we had been there. Today, historical films, grand dramas with lavish costumes appeal to our sense of the past. In Jeffreys' time, this work served the same purpose, to captivate the public by appealing to their historical imagination and sense of romance. While Brock and Tecumseh have remained popular heroes, the name of Sir George Prevost is less well known today. Prevost, as Governor-in-Chief and commander of the British forces, was in effect Brock's boss. The two famously disagreed over the defense of Canada. Brock argued the strategic importance of the Niagara frontier, while Prevost thought that the 200-year-old capital of Quebec, the administrative and cultural hub of the British colonies, was more important. Although Prevost and his story may be less known, there is perhaps no face of 1812 more iconic than that of Laura Secord. There are no true portraits of Laura Secord from this moment in history, only a photograph taken very late in her life, just as she was beginning to be recognized for her efforts. Her status as a bona fide Canadian heroine was not achieved until the decades after her death. Paintings like this one by Lauren K. Smith, depicting Secord's warning to the British Lieutenant, James Fitzgibbon, of the American advance towards his position at Beaver Dams, were created long after her death. Like Jeffreys and Forster's paintings, these images can tell us more about how we have commemorated the war than what actually occurred. On both sides of the conflict, the public yearned to hear of heroic deeds, not only from their leaders and their soldiers, but also of the common folk. Betsy Fanny Doyle, like Laura Secord, was a soldier's wife, but an American soldier's wife. This steel engraving by T. Walker brings to life her courage while under fire. During a British attack at Fort Niagara, Doyle was reported to lift volatile hot shot, cannonballs heated to a red glow, from a stove to feed the nearby guns. The War of 1812 united Canadians against a common foe. This portrait of Louis-Joseph Papineau by Alfred Boisseau captures the essence of this proud lawyer and politician from Montreal. During the War of 1812, Papineau served as a militia officer. He would later on gain fame as a steadfast reformer in the tumultuous rebellions in Lower Canada from 1837 to 1838. The oldest painting on display in the exhibition is that of King George III, painted by the famous Scottish artist Allan Ramsay in 1763. It captures the monarch in much better days. During the War of 1812, George was so ill he did not realize that there was a war in North America and was unable to continue in his royal duties. In our modern world, where we are constantly connected and even bombarded every day with digital images, it is difficult to remember another time, a time before the moving image, a time before photography. One of the only ways to visually represent our past, our emotions and passions, was through art. The faces of 1812 belong to brave people who lived in an era of resilience, cooperation, and reconciliation. The power of their shared experience still resonates with Canadians more than 200 years later.